very typical at NewFinance that we showcase fintech innovation. And one way we do that is we invite entrepreneurs who are innovating in some way. So I'd just like to introduce Bob and Hassan from BCL Technologies.
Thanks everybody for the opportunity to pitch here today. We're going to be talking about is extracting and refining big financial data into gold. What we're talking about here is extracting financial data from any document in any language into any data format. So that can be an earnings release, analyst report, press releases, compliance document, really anything with financial data in that. There we go. So what we're doing is refining a technology that is typically done by hand. Surprisingly enough, when an earnings release comes out, you have a lot of junior analysts in the back rooms of investment banks and hedge funds, literally copying and pasting data from a press release, putting it into their spreadsheet, and about an hour later or so, if they're lucky, they actually start the analysis on what that company did and what they expect them to do in the future. Surprisingly enough, not surprisingly, it's very slow. There's a very high error rate because it's boring work, and it's not easily scaled. So that's either done by the investment banks internally, or they buy the data from Thomson Reuters, people like that, and that's typically done offshore with the same problem, with the same time delays. What we're going to offer is an automated system that's 100 times faster. It's going to have low error rates, which will constantly improve over time as the system learns more and more about the documents, and is very easily scaled, both in terms of the number of documents that can be processed, as well as the number of data items that can be extracted from those documents. So for example, right now, if you buy data from Thomson's on earnings release, you get 200 data points. There are over 19,000 US GAAP terms that can be used in a financial document, press release, et cetera. So they're getting a very, very small portion of the data. And that's why a lot of these companies are doing that by hand, because they need more data for their models to be able to accurately predict what that company's going to do next quarter. So what is BFD Gold? It's a financial triple. It's basically a row and a column in a spreadsheet with a value. So for example, it'd be $3 earnings per share, Q4 2015. We pull out every single financial triple in a document, and we can publish that in any data format. Typically, it's going to be CSV to an Excel data. We can also do XML, SQL. Doesn't really matter. Once the data has been cleansed and purified, we can export that into any format necessary. Our initial target market is going to be earnings release data. There are about 2,500 long-short hedge funds, which are the people that basically are going to be needing equity information after a company publishes their documentation. There are about 2,500 in the US that are tracked by Morningstar, and that was from 2011. There are 1,100 sell-side analysts on the investment banks and other companies like that. They're covering about 18,000 stocks, and there are about 12 major data aggregators in the market. That'd be CapIQ, SNL Financial, Thomson Reuters, people like that. So we see an opportunity with all these people. These would be a distribution play. These would be going direct to the actual end user of the system. Our goal is in Q1, we're going to launch a demo system where we're going to be extracting live earnings release data and then publishing that out so that people can start to see exactly what we're about. Okay? As I just said, we've got the online demo system, and we also have several proofs of concept under negotiation with investment banks, data aggregators, and a regulatory agency. So we're expanding some of the use cases. We're currently seeking a $5 million investment to accelerate the development of the platform and to pursue other markets. We think the earnings release will get us a lot of play in the world. It's going to make people's lives a lot better that are actually having to do that manually right now. But there's other significant use cases in GRC, financial statement aggregation, for example, wealth management, personal financial management, P2P lending. They're typically extracting financial data by hand right now. Okay? Or they're asking their customers to give them their logins to their bank accounts, something people of my age would never ever do. Given the daily, actually almost hourly hacks into people's databases, it's astounding to me that anyone would give anyone in this room their login to the Bank of America account. But they do it, and that's good. But we think there's an opportunity to help them with people that don't want to provide that login information, but still want to upload their statements, have the data extracted, and then put into their personal database so they can manage their finances. There's also an opportunity in contract aggregation for in the insurance and the lease markets. So imagine that you go to progressive.com, you upload your current Geico contract, and it extracts all the proper information and says, here's the 5 companies that can offer you a better rate. Okay. To recap, faster time to market, it's going to be minutes versus hours. Higher accuracy, we're 90% out the gate, and it's going to improve over time. We can scale from the current 200 data items that are being produced right now to the full US GAAP taxonomy. And we'll also be able to scale the number of documents that can be produced. Okay. With that, Hassan is going to give us a quick demo of the system. Just going to take a couple minutes, and then we'll answer it up for Q&A.
So as Bob mentioned, I'm the technical person. I do the research. I don't do the development. There is a difference. But what I'll be doing is going over some of the technical part. Okay, my voice isn't booming enough? Oh my gosh. And I can go into details of questions as you choose. If you want to see more of it, I can talk about it. I can show you the raw data. But the whole game here is unlocking financial text. Most financial information is published in some kind of text, and it ends up in databases. And what Bob was saying is people enter that manually. So what I'm going to show you is what there is and how we go about it. It's actually a 2-step process. So the documents come in a number of formats, showing all right? Yeah. Then they can be Word, PDF, HTML. But you'll see that what the people are interested in is not only the tabular data, but the text data. And the text can be in many formats. They can be written up like this, or in a paragraph, or sometimes they're interested in tables with different interpretations. And as Bob mentioned, they can be in multiple languages. The example here is in English, but we can do Japanese, Chinese, Korean, Spanish, Hebrew, Arabic. So we've done a number of different languages. So the 2 parts to this. First part is the text analyzer. It takes the text, parses it using a natural language engine, and finds all the components. We find the 3 components which Bob said. What is it, how much is it, and when did it happen? That basically defines any financial event. Then the second part is the table analyzer, which takes the tabular data and does the same thing. Now, you'd think that's simple, but if you look at tables, there are lots and lots of different formats, and people get very, very creative when they're doing that. So we do a table analyzer, and that's basically sort of a parser for tables. We have different models for tables. And then we extract the raw data and put it in an intermediate format. This has all the information that is necessary. It has the triples, but it has all the ancillary data. Sometimes we have to get data outside the table. Sometimes we have to get the paragraph heading to get the meaning. The real key thing is, what are they talking about? If you don't know what they're talking about, it really doesn't mean anything. And then we extract it. There is something which maps all these terms, including the language, into specific terminology. The one we're working on primarily is the US GAAP, which has 19,000 concepts. 19,000 concepts is a lot. I think it's too much. IFRS is a little better. All professors will like IFRS, but the SEC doesn't. It is 3,500 concepts. We also work with other taxonomies like GDPs for African countries, something we're looking at. So that's an overview of the system. Do you have any questions before I do a quick demo? Yes? Yeah.
So one of the problems why this conversion process is manual is because you have lots of normalization to do that's specific to industries and specific to companies within industries. So you're solving, I can see you're solving first part of it, but how do you solve that part of it?
Okay, so what I didn't emphasize over here is, we have something which maps from the concept to a specific taxonomy. And there are 2 parts to the problem, as you specified. One is getting the phrase that you can understand. Sometimes it's just in the table, just in the text. Sometimes you have to look around. For instance, you'd have EPS data, and all it would have is quarterly numbers on the left side, so you have to know it's EPS. So based on that, we have a mapping technology which maps it into US GAAP. We have used that already in our XBRL product, where we do automatic mapping. So we have that done. The problem also comes in is the language differs. I mean, there are people across the Atlantic, and they would say that the language does differ across the Atlantic. It does differ from Canada to America and across the coast. I come from the West Coast, and we do speak slightly differently. Some people say we're a little what do they say? What's the polite word for people from your school?
don't think I can say that.
He's from Berkeley, so I'm from the East Coast, so. So there are language models we have, and what we would do, our customers require very high accuracy, north of 95%. And so what we will do is develop a custom system which gives them that kind of accuracy. If they do want breadth without the accuracy, we can give them other models which they do work with humans to correct. Humans will have to correct. I'll never promise 100%, even though he will. That was a joke. That was a joke. Bob, don't. But there will have to be humans. Now, just to expand on that, for probabilistic models that algorithmic traders use, they are willing to live with some form of error because the models have errors. So that's all right. So we will give them very high accuracy. To us, high accuracy is over 95%.
But the point is we'll have a tool that will allow you viewing any ambiguous terms that you can't figure out, and then we just ask them what's the right answer. And then we'll learn from that, and we'll know next time that's actually what this analyst means when they say this. So this is what Apple was talking about. They have a different definition in their world of what net income is, and that's actually net income plus whatever. So we'll be able to, there will be human intervention, because the machine can't do it all.
A human never does it 100%, and neither will a machine. So.
Is the intended use case for, let's say, a hedge fund manager, like if you're doing back testing, or is it for an analyst, like if I want to look at non-performing assets over an extended period of time? Because from the standard financial data side over here on the right, it doesn't look like I can search the data or look through like the management discussion and analysis section of the financial statements. What is the use case, and how can someone parse through or search through the data that they're looking for?
So that's a very good question. So the different types of people who handle the data differently. What we get them is the financial information. How they use it is different. So in the case of a document like this, there's text data and table data. We'll find the three items, which is there. We can find, by and large, any concept which will be there. For instance, one analyst wanted to know if trains got derailed in a certain place and how many cars they lost. Now, we can't find any numeric concept with that phrase. What we won't be able to do if we haven't mapped it already is what that means. There's no standard US GAAP taxonomy and train derailment or lost cars. So we'll just give them that text, and they can decide what they'll do.
Will you be able to look at it over an extended period of time? Because if I'm just looking at one number,
yes,
it doesn't provide context. I need to look at it over 3 or 4 quarters or 3 or 4 years.
Yeah, so you're coming into the second part of the thing, which we have decided not to venture into too much. One is, once the data is in there, how do you do the analysis? Now, if you give us multiple documents, we will get you that data within that triple. So, for instance, if it's a standard concept, for instance, your bank account at that instant, that was the value, and so on and so forth. Since it's a standardized amount, you can easily write a program that will go and parse that, whether it's a CSV or XML or SQL database. So we can do that. So it will get you all the data. How you use it is business logic, and we have right now chosen not to venture into that area.
You good clean data, and then after that, then there's way better analysis how to do that. They can use
This is very dear to my heart, really. This is my co-founder. We have a startup where we grab trustee data from Wells Fargo, CD Mortgage, you name it. We're grabbing that data. And we are doing a lot of that extraction. And one of the issues we found, and I'll be honest with you, we're speaking to one of the Federal Reserve banks right now because they really like what we're doing and how we're grabbing that data, is there is a lot of inconsistencies from not only from bank to bank, yes, but within the same bank, within the same. So this is really dear to my heart. I mean, we do this every month. I mean, we're looking at, on a monthly basis, we're doing anywhere from 16 to 64 gigs of this stuff. So this is what we do. So this is dear to me. Yes, we do.
We'd be happy to talk to you. The variations are twofold, even as you say, inside a bank or the same person writing it. So they'll change the language, and they will change the format. So the information might move around, and they will change the format.
I don't know if this is a follow-up to, I don't know, yours was more of a statement, but anyways, how do you know how do you know when there's discrepancy in the data, what is truth? So, you have all these errors that you're talking about, right? And some of them you've discussed basically syntax errors, or interpretation, but like what happens with like the data being like inaccurate and how do you know? Because there's,
if Apple reports $12 a share and it's in their PDF, there's not much we can do with that. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, I mean, in your first slide of your deck, you talked about how this is manually entered and there's tons of error that can happen or it does happen. And you're analyzing the text in this flow chart. If you have, because I assume that you're taking not just one analyst's report on a single company, but every report that's been generated on that company, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. So if there's errors in 12 of the 25 documents that aren't relative to the syntax, how do you know?
Well, again, the two parts of the errors, as you say. First, there will be errors as we extract them. If people write it incorrectly or change it. But if there is a systematic error, that's usually our customers want to do it downstream. So that's more business logic. For instance, I believe even to the SEC, I forget which company it was, it put in its valuation annual revenues in trillions. And as far as I know, no company has revenues in trillions. But somebody actually pressed the button because there's a review step and you press the button and it went in. And
yeah, they've had a fat finger. So I guess the answer to my question, if I'm hearing you right, is that that's something you let your customers interpret.
Yes.
Your system does not interpret it.
We'll pull out $1 trillion, and if that's a wrong number because the analyst wrote it wrong,
that's not on you.
Vet that. We can't. We really don't have the capability of vetting that.
Cool.
Yeah.
Create a system where you can flag that. Because if you know that there's like a pattern around why things are being wrong, right? So you know that whatever, a certain entity or a certain type of data or a certain way that something's phrased is causing an issue, is there a way that you could flag that so that, okay, maybe you still have to have someone manually look at it, but there's a way that you could at least start like automating the flagging system so that part of your QA, exactly. So then at least you would know, so that part of your QA would be like, okay, I need to check these and these and these things, so it'd be a little bit more automated than, just having to go back manually.
So the answer is yes. It's a probabilistic or stochastic system, so we can set thresholds on where you want. Now, if the data is wrong, that usually is in the realm of analysis in afterwards. Our customers have so far wanted to fix it themselves rather than have us go there. But that's not necessarily something we can do that. If there's off by a 0, then you can flag it. Okay, the number has changed by an order of magnitude, and therefore somebody should look at it and make sure it's correct. So that's possible to do.
So we could, for example, add up the numbers in a net income statement and validate that the bottom number actually jives with what the math says. So we could do some basic error correction, which would probably be very valuable for people. Because I'd love to know that if I were a market maker, I'd love to know that Apple screwed up on their math and no one else has figured it out, and I do. That would be a really cool thing to know. And they would probably hopefully pay us dearly.
Yeah, so Bob did mention something. So we can do some checking and things like that. So the SEC does require some of that, and we have that built in. But often those summations are a little trickier than it seems on the surface. Okay. So on that, I'll quickly start the demo. It's a fairly simple one. This is a Google a report on Google, and we just will be taking the numbers out of this so that people don't have to type that in. Here we go. So this is more for the purpose of visualization. And so we'll run in the background, it'll take a few seconds. It's going through on those steps. It's taking the tables out. This one doesn't have OCR. Most of the PDFs, we can do it. With OCR, what we have to do is do error correction based on the kinds of information you want, because people will often have, numeric OCR is very difficult to correct. So we have to know something like dimensions or the currency or something like that to be able to fix that, but we can do that.
Part of your problem.
Yeah, so
the problem is OCR introduces about 10% error rate, just to begin with. So we're starting with 90% data, and then we start to extract from there. So it is a much more difficult problem.
So again, this is more to visualize. It pulled out all the data and it mapped it into standard taxonomy, this is actually for a customer they wanted, and you can see all the items came out of there, and you can easily visualize it. You can do it across quarters if you have multiple quarters. You can slice it and dice it anyway. This is just a quick way of visualizing it.
40 data points from a net income statement in so just to give you an idea of
Go ahead.
Performance on his little Dell laptop.
Do you have an SDK for this?
We can develop that for you. Right now, what we're doing is turnkey systems because it does require a fair amount of training, but we can work on that. Go ahead, sorry.
To add to this statement, if a PDF is generated as an image, then
you have to do OCR. Yeah. Yeah.
Is that the weakness of the system right now because you don't do OCR?
No, we do OCR. We have to do extra correction.
We just know that there's going to be additional errors because of just the OCR component.
And the image also depends. You can scan an image in as a PDF, and then the error rate is much higher. Whereas if you print to an image from the PDF, the error rate's a lot lower. So that's something we can do.
How do I get the data that's extracted into a platform that I use for my analysis, like StatPro or FactSet or a Bloomberg?
Okay. So those ones, normally those will have some method of importing it in a standard format. So if you can tell us what the format is, whether it's a CSV or an XML or a SQL database, we can pump it in there. We have it in a sort of canonical format where it can go into almost any end format.
Yeah, and I think that answered my question. I mean, I was wondering whether or not you guys are parsing URLs that contain the documents, or whether or not you have something similar to what recently came out of the MIT lab, which is called Data Tomer, where basically you can build up a grammar across any number of URLs. And an analyst who, for example, says, okay, I want you to parse 80,000 URLs and look for EPS on these stock symbols.
Yes.
You can do that in about 5 minutes.
Yeah.
So is that something similar to what you guys are going for here?
It's a complementary system. So what Tamer does is more relevance feedback, if you are familiar with that thing. So if a whole bunch of users said this means this, and it takes a voting engine. I don't know the proprietary technology, but the basic system is it's a relevance feedback system where people say, I think this means this, and based on that, it'll fix it.
Expert component to it, which takes away a lot of the errors that you get when you're trying to parse document, because what happens is that you essentially have an expert community.
Yes.
When it comes across something in the document it doesn't understand, it sends it to the community of 1 or 2 experts,
yes,
which may be the analyst, which
yes,
may be someone working at a trustee at
yes,
a bank,
yes,
and then they then sort of like self-corrected, and then the machine learns from that. So as a consequence, over time, you get a much, much lower rate than typical ETL type system.
That does reduce the error rate, and that's again in the error correction part which Bob was talking about. We have some of that incorporated, and we built it, but ours is compatible with them. It doesn't necessarily take away their thing. They assume the document is already formatted in that triple. What is it, how much is it, and when did it happen? That's what we get out. The standardization of what they're doing is the standardization of what it is. And that's, we do some of that, but you can refine it continuously with humans there. At least that's my understanding.
What would stop someone like Newswire, for example, because they get the EPS numbers sort of like before anyone else. As a matter of fact, they'll announce it pretty much to the street. What would stop someone like Newswire from essentially doing what you guys are doing now? Because they have all that data.
5 years of computational research and development.
So I haven't seen the format for Newswire. Normally it comes in some form of text, and doing that parsing is fairly difficult, especially when you have multi-clausal sentences where you have to do a reference, you have to resolve references. That's not trivial.
And right now, pulling out EPS manually is a trivial task. And CapIQ publishes that within seconds of an earnings release hitting Apple's website. They're giving you about 8 data points in a matter of 10, 15 seconds. but it's all the deep knowledge. I want to know. I want to know iPhone sales in North Africa. I want to know like iPad sales in Europe. I want to know all the other stuff that doesn't necessarily talk. It relates to EPS, but it's not EPS. And if I'm doing a deep analysis on whether I'm going to buy, sell, or hold, and recommend my customers or my hedge fund buy, sell, or hold, I'm looking beyond just EPS.
Okay, yeah, no, I mean, when I was at UBS, getting the EPS data, I mean, we could get that like in seconds, right?
Yeah.
It's sort of like the complementary data around it.
That's what we're going to offer in minutes.
Okay.
Is all that.
Yeah, because that wasn't clear earlier. I mean, okay.
Yeah, that's what we're doing.
It's the context that EPS data fits in that's missing.
Right. So my model may have 500 data points that I'm tracking on Apple that I want to know, and then I'm going to say, yeah, they're going to do better, they're going to do worse than expected. We're going to give them all 500 data points for that, so that they can do a more deep analysis without doing a lot of copying and pasting and having all those issues. And back to your, I think your question was about, you know, a community-based decision-making tool. And we can certainly offer that. We can say, okay, here's the 5 data points we're not sure of, and here's our expert community. And they're all sitting there waiting to answer the right question because they want to share that data. We could do that, or we could say, no, if you're a hedge fund, you're going to have to do that yourself because you don't want to share that knowledge with your competitors. Because they want to be first and they want to be right in their recommendations. And so they're probably not going to be as willing to share their expertise as much as maybe other people.
Yeah, no, it may be so that, for example, with data tamer, that community of experts can be internal.
Correct.
So to the extent to which I could give them that, right? So a hedge fund can say, well, this guy really knows the pharmaceutical industry. And then so he can self-correct, and over time, the learning algorithm can really adjust, and you get much, much better results.
And they'll have that expertise in-house. Yeah. Thanks so much for your time.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you.